So yeah, so we could have gone the other way and said, let's take an approach that let's go fix it. Let's take it into HR. So I didn't come from HR. I came from an operational background in engineering, where I think there was a clear understanding that for this to work, it needed to be led by the business. It had to come from the business because it can't be owned by HR. It can't be owned by one leader, and it has to come from everyone's viewpoint. So if the organisation is telling us something's not right, it's important that we got people together and got a very clear cross-section in the organisation to tell us, what that, really what that meant. Where was it? What wasn't working? What do we need to improve? And for us, yeah, we couldn't have had that reflection or had that held that mirror up to ourselves if we didn't have those people to tell us. One thing that we wanted to make sure was that we got people from all areas of the business. So we went out looking for people initially. We asked people to volunteer. We asked people to contribute. People we knew who would contribute, who would challenge, but also would have positive experience in the company. So we encouraged both. I think we looked from somebody from all functional areas of the site. So we had good coverage that way. We also had people from different levels of the organisation. So we essentially have 4 levels on site. We have team member, team leader, manager and director, and we had somebody from each level in the organisation on the team. The first thing we did was we got together as a team and we took a day out. I think it was the 18th of October in 2010, and I got into actually this room here, and there was 30 of us. We had our HR director, we had HR, a HR business partner on the team, and we had people from across the organisation. And I think it was an interesting experience for HR because, one, they were part of the business, but also they're hearing the stories back from the business that they maybe didn't hear before. So I think initially it was a bit challenging to hear that, but essentially they got a better picture of where the business was at. Initially, we took a lot of time to understand where we were going to focus our efforts, and in order to do that, we really said, look, we needed a contract up front, how we were going to approach it. So the very first thing we did was we spent a lot of time understanding. So we took a series of meetings within the team. Maybe it took us now 2 or 3 months to get our heads around it, to really understand the model, what we wanted to achieve, where we needed to focus improvement. But yeah, and we did that as a team. We worked through it. We asked questions. We got to a common understanding around particular things. Initially, we went out, we asked people to volunteer, but we also went out and we asked people to get involved as well. So we knew that there was people there well connected in the organisation, had credibility, were willing to challenge us, and we asked for that. Every business is busy at the moment, but I think so. We've targeted 1 to 2 hours per week, which sounds like a lot, but I mean, if we get to do that, maybe 3 weeks out of 4 in a month, it's it's a success for us. So I'd look at 3 to 4 hours per month, maybe a little bit more in terms of what we do as what we work on as a team. Do people get time? People manage it themselves. They work with their team leaders and trying to get that time off, and sometimes they work the time back in. Yeah, so early on we said there was 30 in the team. We said we needed to divide and conquer. We said, let's pick 3 or 4 things and let's divide the team up into 4. We picked 4 teams, and each team had a sub-team leader. Now, I think what was really successful for us, particularly last year, was that the sub-team leaders really took ownership for coordinating the meetings, for setting the agenda, for working through the action items. So they were people who came from the business, who had a particular role in the business, but also led those teams. So that was our approach. In terms of the time that they spent, some teams met once a week, depending on shift rotation and the practicalities, the logistics of getting people together. For some teams, it made more sense to maybe get together for 3 or 4 hours at a time. Others 1 to 2 hours every week. But if it was 3 or 4 hours at a time, it was maybe once a month. So it's what worked for them, really. Yeah. It depends on the reflection the team give back. So if the reflection, and how that's received. So our leadership team are very conscious that they want to hear what's going on in the organisation. How they approached what they heard was important in that sense. So they didn't get defensive. They didn't try to, argue the point. What they did was they listened and they took what the team said and they changed their mind. So, it wasn't it was an honest reflection given back, and it was taken that way. So I think that was a big part of why, we don't have that kind of that dynamic in here. Honestly, I don't think it was about reassuring them. I think it was about taking a risk. So I think the you know, our general manager was Pat O'Sullivan. He's been key to this. He goes out into the organisation, he asks people for their opinion, and he takes it if it's good, bad or indifferent, and he acts on it. I think he wanted to do this. He thought it was important that, look, you know, whatever reflection we got back, it was important to hear what it was. But yeah, it was a risk. It was a risk. We clearly link high trust with high performance here. So you know, a high trust environment is fundamental to our ability to perform well as a business. So what we say is we create the environment where people can give their personal best every day. Through doing that, we achieve better individual performance, we achieve better business results, and we're successful as an organisation. There is, you know, in terms of a cynical message from that, it's difficult for people to get that if it's related to performance. If it's about making it a warmer, fuzzier, better experience for them on a daily basis, yeah, I could understand why they'd be cynical about it, but you know, we're very clear on why we do this, so I think that helps us. We broke one of the sub-teams out in our first year in 2010 to 2011. We said a sub-team took that work, and what we did was basically use the meetings to answer each of the questions. So during the week we took a question, we went back out into the organisation, talked to the people we worked with, and got stories and examples of what those practices were. We took it back into the room, we documented them, and then we built a pack. So yeah, it was you know, it was a really interesting experience. To pull the pack together, I think it took us, in the end, it probably took us the bones of 2 days, I think, to document it. But in terms of, you know, going out and getting the stories and talking to people, that was just something we did over a period of time. So it wasn't a big lift. You know, we just took our time. We went early on with it, but yeah, it was a couple of days to document the whole thing. Yeah. What we took was the analogy of stories. So we said this isn't about you know, it's not an audit and in a you know, in a FDA or a regulated environment as we're in. You know, when you hear audit, sometimes people, you know, have connotations, huge amounts of paperwork. So we took the approach that let's hear the stories in the organisation. You know, let's hear the stories around how we connect with the community. You know, times in which we you know, we celebrated events. You know, what were the best stories that came out of those? So you know, it was basically conversation. And what it did first was it got those stories going in the organisation as well. So people started to talk about and remind them, have a cup of coffee, and I heard it from, you know. So so that's the approach we took. What we did actually was we took the document when we finished it, and we said we can't really put this away now. So what we did was we published it. So we made it into a small little handbook. We left it on the tables on the way into the cafeteria. People took it away, read it, and it was amazing because a lot of people came up afterwards saying, you know, when you look at it all together, you know, it's amazing what we do. So yeah, it was. And you know, you talk about the cynics earlier on. Yeah, some of those people came up and said, yeah, I can see it now. You know, I think that the first one is to go out early with people and make them very aware of the dates that it's going to happen. You need to facilitate as well. So you know, in some instances, people don't work at a PC, so we need to make that available to them. What we did was we had a very visual campaign. So we put on the way into the cafeteria, everyone passes it every day. Some banners, the date the survey was coming. We did a countdown. You know, every day we sent in the last 5 days, sent a reminder email with a countdown clock on it. The other thing we did was we took we actually took the approach that if we achieved a particular percentage, we would be able to donate €500 towards the local hospice. So you know, we basically had a measurement by which every couple of days we were able to go back to ourselves and ask, you know, where were we at with participation, and when we got to the 90% mark, you know, we were able to do that. So that helped drive it. You know, it was important. I think one of the things we did was we looked at how we you know, how do we, you know, what logo do we put aside for a great place to work? I mean, obviously, you know, we weren't a great place to work to start with. We were coming from a very low base when we kicked off, but you know, we wanted to connect with people, and we wanted it to be about bringing everyone into it. So we created a logo where it had Great Place to Work, the name Great Place to Work, not the brand, but Genzyme, so we'd be happy to hear. But Genzyme is a Sanofi company, and we created an umbrella over that, and the idea being that everyone's a part, everyone makes it a great place to work. And what we did was we used that then to when we talked about reward and recognition, you know, any of the communications we put out, people started to associate the brand, the logo, with a positive thing from working in Genzyme. We got the breakdowns in as detailed format as we could, so we went down to individual teams. So any team greater than 5 got an individual report. I think in 2011 was our first time this team worked on it. We came up across the site, but what we didn't probably do well was we didn't communicate quickly enough. So we did the survey in October. By the time it got to the end of the year, everyone hadn't seen their survey results. Last year we made a big effort to make sure that before everyone left for Christmas, you know, we had the survey gone through with people, so they understood where their individual team was at, and everyone saw it, every team member saw it. And what that helped to do was to input then to the following year's specific team or individual goals and objectives around, you know, what we need to do as teams and individuals to make it a better place to work. I mean, going back to say 2009. We didn't break it down to that detail, but people ask for it. People want to know. Leaders want to know. Teams want to know. They want to know where they're at. It makes it more relevant to them. The results that they have, if they're more specific to me, I'm more willing to take ownership for improving them. So, you know, I think the lower level of detail you can go into, the higher level of detail you go into, the more ownership people will feel for making it better. You know, we're a kind of numbers-driven organisation. That's the way we've worked over the last number of years, and it's proven to be successful for us. So what we did was, rather than fight against that, we used that. So we said we put targets in place, and we didn't target a better score. We didn't target a higher percentage. What we did was we target certain enablers, and we made it very clear to people, in order for this to get better, what we need to do is you need to sit down and take a couple of steps. First step is share the results with your team openly. That's the first action, and if that's done in month 1, great. That's the target. Second action was to start to have the conversation, understand what needs to get better and what success would look like if you were to improve it. Month 2. Third month, it was about having an action plan documented. We gave everyone a very clear template in terms of how to document what they wanted to make better, what success would look like, who would take ownership and share the responsibility amongst the team. But we didn't measure the score. We measured, you know, did people engage with what we were trying to achieve. So and that drove us to. I got a call from a guy 2 weeks ago on a Saturday, looking a team leader who maybe wouldn't have engaged with this 2 years ago, who wanted to understand what was the best way to go about having that conversation with his team. So it's certainly driving the right behaviours. We spent a lot of time working with managers, so I think a lot of my time was spent working with team leaders and managers to make sure that, you know, they fully understood what we were trying to achieve here, and it was the benefit to them. So, you know, creating that environment where people can give their best means that their work will be easier. You know, their teams will perform better. We also took the analogy of, you know, when you're sitting on the airplane and the oxygen mask comes down, the first thing you need to do is put it on the parent. The next thing you need to do is fix it on the child. So, you know, as leaders, as middle managers, as team leaders and managers in the organisation, we made sure that, you know, they were in the right place before we focused on the rest of the organisation. So I think that was important for us too. You know, as an example, you know, going back last year, we had different colour lanyards. So people who were here on a temporary basis and people who were here on a full-time basis had a grey or a blue lanyard. This team wanted to change that. They wanted, you know, the feeling of impartiality. You know, that sense of we're all in this together. And you know, it was a significant change, because what we were saying was when we put it in, it wasn't the right thing to do. So you know, when we presented back to the site leadership team and this. They agreed, but they agreed after we maybe had some, you know, stories to share, after we said, you know, how this makes people feel and what this makes the place to work feel like as a company. So, you know, I think we did need to get them to endorse it, and we did need to get their buy-in. Yeah, the biggest challenge is that it is to listen. It's to try and understand where people are coming from, and. When I say listen, the first piece is listen. We take a certain methodology. It's to ask, listen, understand. The hardest thing for me was to understand. So in some cases, people were telling me something, and I really didn't understand where they were coming from on it. And I formed an opinion before I you know, came back to them and shared what I heard. So, you know, is to ask for more and to keep asking and get people into the place where, you know, this isn't seen as something that, you know, is just, you know, maybe an offloading session. It's about really understanding, look, what do we need to fix so that we can move forward, stop working inwardly and start working outwardly and moving forward with this. The team have been fantastic. Breaking up into 4 groups worked for us last year, but it's important to get back together at the end. The energy, I think, it basically comes from the people taking things that they want to work on. So we don't break it up, and I don't say, you know, you go work on this. They develop what they work on. They're motivated to do that. You know, they have a certain kind of a grow for it, and they go and they spend their energy on that. So that doesn't tend to be an issue. But I think we did celebrate. We got back together at the end of last year before Christmas. We went for lunch. We had a bit of an ease up, and you know, we said, you know, it was nice to get back together. But yeah, we've done a few things during the year. But yeah, I think a lot of it is actually in the meetings. You know, the fun you have when you're talking through things, like, you know, and the stories you hear. So, you know, you get a bit of energy from that too, yeah.